welcome back to my channel. I'm so delighted to be continuing on sharing you all my tricks with watercolor paper and high flow acrylics and just experimenting, letting loose and having fun. I've got the link below for my supplies. I love these Stabilo Woodies, especially this black one. It's got a lot of pigment that you can color on like a crayon, but then it's activated with water, so it's really fun to see the results. As usual, I love to start with mark making just to get me into my zone. Quite often, some of this won't even show up later, but it's just a start. It gives you something other than a blank sheet to hit with water. So I'm starting off with a fine line pencil, and I'm just loosely holding the pen and scribbling around. You could even use your non-dominant hand if you want to make this even more intuitive and more organic. Again, I'm just doing this to get into my zone. Sometimes these get revealed through all my layers, and when they do, they're happy little surprises because they end up, quite often I end up loving what I see, but most of the time this just gets covered up. But I'm trying to teach you to let loose, be free, and just have fun exploring, because sometimes the surprises that come from that are better than ones that you planned meticulously all along. I like the flow and the organic and the intuitiveness of this technique. Those are not watercolor. Those are wax crayons I've got on the left. You could use any cheap children's or dollar store wax crayons. That quality here does not matter. What I'm doing is putting down the wax crayon as a resist. I'm not pressing too hard, so who knows, but because they're wax and it goes on this paper, later when I add very fluid paint, it will be resisted by these wax areas. Now, because I'm putting them fairly thinly, they're not really going to resist too much, because there's so much room there for the paint to sit around it anyway. But the point is they're permanent and they will show up through the layers somehow. I'm going over some of the pink and yellow with extra white just to make sure it's down there good. And the other thing is, once I add fluid paint on top of this, it may sit on top of that wax until and if I use a spray ball and spray it away. Then it'll shoot off the wax and reveal that. So we'll just see what happens. Remember, they're permanent. Now I've got the Stabilo Woody, and I just love it. It goes on very softly as a pencil crayon, and you'll see what happens from here. When I spray water, the wax crayon will stay as is, but look what happens, the magic of the water flow with the Stabilo Woody. There's so much pigment in it. I'll do this almost all the time on my abstracts at the beginning. And I love to just spray a lot of water and let it flow into little crevices and rivers like that. Look at how fun that is. You couldn't even think of painting that, but there it is for you to explore later on. And while that's drying, I'm adding a bunch of dots and marks just to give a mix of pattern throughout the page. And when you color like I did there on the left with those circles, if you color on top of already wet paper, it already darkens and starts to become magic. So I'm just dabbing everywhere, giving a little bit of variety, making a busy background. This is just an underpainting. Now the water paper curls up when it gets wet, so I'm just going to weigh that down a little bit with a few heavy items. And I love to just let this dry and see how it turns out when it's dry. And before it dried completely, I thought I don't want too much black on the page. I like the shapes that the water gave it, but I'm dabbing back a little of the excess black pigment just because I want to do really happy colors today, and I don't want them to get muted by too much black. I'm loving this happy vibe already. The point of my style of painting and my channel Painting for Your Soul is just to get things down and just play and experiment. And I hope you're doing it, whether it's on a paper like this. We've graduated from art journal books to big papers so that we can come up with a masterpiece to frame. And I'm happy to take you to this next level because it is a great big 11 by 15 sheet. And somehow at the end of this, with all the things we throw at this piece of paper, you're going to end up even on your own with some sections, some small or big section of that sheet that you can crop and say, I'm happy to make this a painting to frame. Now I've sprayed more water all over it after it dried, and now I'm adding some fluid. This is high flow acrylic paint from Golden. I love it. It's my go-to. So far in all of my videos, I've almost always used high flow acrylics and not very often thick pasted paint. And that's just the technique I like to be unique and show you. I love using them for glazing, and that's pretty much what's happening here. It's just a thin watered down layer that goes on very transparent, and I call that glazing. And we're just playing around here with a very soft brush to move it around. And again, there's a lot of water on the page, and that helps this high flow acrylic flow around the page. So much fun. Again, I'm in the mood today for very bright, cheerful, happy colors. It is spring, by the way, so why not celebrate? And I like the intensity of light watered down versus directly out of the tube going on a little darker. I like the depth of different shades of a color. Now I'm just dabbing some of that back with the paper towel, and that gives an imprint from the imprint that's on the paper towel. But that's going to be so subtle. That's not my focus here today. You can see when I spray, if you can sort of tell where that stayed white. That's because I've got the white wax there. And the more water you spray and force off of that area, the more it reveals the wax underneath. So, but because I didn't press really hard with the wax or make very wide lines, it might be very subtle, the effect. But so part of the technique today is playing and doing layers, and part of it is learning about resist and the ebb and flow of fluid paint moving around a page. And the more like I say, the more I get that water bottle and spray, the more it shoots that color. Some of that color might be sitting on top of the wax, and it might even dry on top of the wax. But if I was to spray with water and give it a good shoot of water on it, it would shoot that paint off of the wax. I'm loving these colors together so far. It's just bright and cheerful. And I don't mind while I see when I put the orange over the green, it morphs into a new color. That's the whole point of today's lesson, is playing with colors and the fluidity of it and how they can change when they touch each other. You can see how brown it gets if you put that orange over anything blue and green, and that's okay. I'm keeping that light. I'm going to shoot some of that away because I don't want it to look dirty. And that's the joy of using a heavy quality. This is I'm really enjoying this watercolor paper. Cold press is more resistant to things you throw at it and how you move around on the surface of that paper. So that's why I like cold pressed. It's also rough with a texture on either side of the sheet, so you could use either side. I got this on Amazon. It was a package of, I think, 50 sheets. And I love it because what I'm showing you today is doing a larger sheet, and then we'll cut it down once I decide which area I want to use as a painting to frame. But what I do love to do is this technique as well, large sheets, put on a bunch of stuff like this, and then cut it into even smaller shapes for cards. It's nice to work on a very big piece, be very playful and not think about anything, and then once you cut it into small sections, you can be very amazed and surprised at the little mini paintings that want to shout out at you. I've got some colored tissue paper this time. The first video I did in this series, I used printed white tissue prints that were mostly for texture and pattern. This time I'm using colored tissue prints that I did the other day on my gel plate, and I purposely want to put colored tissue papers I've already got lots of texture on the page from my Stabilo Woody and all my mark making and the wax crayons. So this time I want to use, here I've got white, but I want to use a variety of wonderful printed tissue prints like these for pattern, texture, and color, and see where we go from there. I'm basically going to use all these tissue papers, or a lot of them. That one I want to use just as a background pattern. It's one of my favorite ones for pattern, and I like it because it's fine honeycomb lines, and I can glaze them if I want, or I could leave them white. But in either case, it reveals colors and shapes below as well, and it just adds a new dimension to what I'm working on. So what I'll do is I'll glue all of these collage tissue prints and paintings on top of this piece of art already, and we're just going to explore here and have fun collaging. We're going to go nuts. We're going to because it's clear tissue paper, because it's clear tissue paper, it's very fun, because every time I add new layers, little bits of the other might still be revealed, and they overlap transparently in some cases. And let's just see what we get. This one here has a lot of white on the page and then blue, so that makes this pale blue very opaque. So when I put it down on top of the green area, it will really stand out. Look at that. So again, today is all about collage play, and I'm placing these down. And what I like doing with collage papers like this is you can change your mind and alternate the direction of all of these things. If I would have just put blue paint down on the page, it would have been on the page where I put it. This way, you get to play and turn them around and see what works, how they overlap, what goes over top of the other. It's just way more fun, more organic, more intuitive. I've got a straight torn line on that blue tissue, and this time I'm doing a jagged organic edge when I cut around this shape of white paint. And to do that, I use a brush with clean water, dab it in the water, paint around the edge, and then you can easily tear away and keep an organic edge versus the cut edge on the other side. And I'm doing that with this particular print because it is a jagged, distressed looking print, and I want to encourage the effect of that. And most often when I tear away parts of a print off of tissue, I do this method because I don't want strong cut lines. Because even though the tissue starts to dissolve after you glue it down with matte medium, you can sometimes still see the edge. So what you can see here is a variety of tissue effects. I've got that, which is very chalky and organic. I've got very opaque pale blue. I've got a very fine line honeycomb print over top. I like how all of these work together, and they're all completely different. So I'm going to start putting down these honeycomb prints first with a good coating of matte medium. I don't use gloss medium at this point because I'm trying to keep the gloss down, the shiny effect down until the very end, and then I use it more like a glaze, like a varnish over top. So let's get this down. I hope you love what we've got so far. I'm really in a happy zone at this point because I just love what's already here, and it's only my underpainting. This is just gonna, who knows where this is gonna go, but we're gonna have fun. This is a bit too small, this brush. I could have used a bigger one, but the last time I did this, I forgot to put that brush into the jar of water, and it dried, and I ruined the brush. So I have to go out and buy a bigger brush now. You can see I'm putting quite a bit down. The more matte medium I put down, the more it dissolves that tissue and makes everything clear, and then all you end up seeing is that print that I'm laying down. Look at how dramatic this is. This is just so fun. I'm using a wide paint spreader because it helps spread that tissue, flatten the tissue down on top of the matte medium without pushing. Like with a brush, sometimes you can push too hard and you push away the tissue because it gets dissolved and fragile. So if you use a paint spreader, It's a little more manageable. I've decided to scrape away while it's wet over top of those black smudge areas, because I really want them to pop forward. And because it's created a little bit of texture from the bunching up of the tissue, that's why I added a lot of extra matte medium over there to sort of fill the gap and make it more smooth once it dries. Look at this. Isn't that fun? There's so much variety. And I'm trying to make a very busy background, and later on I will subdue it and give, I guess what I'm trying to say is the more layers I put down, the more the story becomes alive for me. I don't see right away what I'm going to end up with. That happens about 3/4 of the way through my process. In the meantime, I'm giving opportunities in all these layers for details to be there so that later they may or may not be exposed. And they will work with other layers on top. And you can't get those results and the happy surprises unless you take a chance and put all these layers. Look at how fun this one is. And you can see, because I did an organic edge when I tore that with water, look at how that paper tissue disappears, and it looks just like I took a paintbrush and scribbled that on the page. I don't want to hide those 4 circles in black on the left corner, and they won't get hidden because this is such a transparent kind of print. It will work with it. Again, I'm trying to show layers of interest. And I always try to spread out from the middle outward in all directions. Again, you can see how that paint spreader is a more effective way of spreading and flattening this. And I'm not pressing very hard. Now, I do have a straight edge there, and because I didn't use water to tear that. And you can see the difference. And right down there where I'm tearing away with my fingernail, while it's still wet and mushy, I can pull back any of the tissue that I don't want. Same with up there. I don't mind. See, it bunched up on itself when I went over it the second time with the brush, so I didn't like that bunching up of tissue, so I scraped that away. Now I've got this lovely opaque blue print. Not print, but swatch of color. And I love that there's a hit of orange on it as well. I don't mind that that orange is subtly showing up in a smudgy, foggy way throughout my page. And this is just another area where there's a hint of it, but it is not my strongest color. My strongest colors are the blue, green, and white with black and white accents, and then a hit of that orange. They're all very complementary colors together. Again, I could have got a thick paint and painted that on, but this allows me the opportunity, and I love it's the opportunity to play. And I love at the bottom of that where my thumb is. I like how that touch is very strong, gives a strong jagged line where the blue hits the green, and it creates a direction of where that green wants to travel from the bottom middle there up to the left. It's just fun how they play together. Overlapping, sometimes mingling. Now, I don't want such a big patch of blue there, so eventually I will do something across that as well to break it up. So I'm just gluing because I've got it. Instead of taking a paintbrush, I'm just gluing down as if I did a big brush stroke. And the reason why I encourage you to start off using tissues to be bold with color is so that you can get brave and take risk and realize it's okay to take a brush and paint a big brush stroke of blue there. But this is a safer way to try it, because if you don't like it, you can pull it off before it dries. So it's just giving you a chance to safely play and explore, and then later on you may choose not to do it as tissue. You may just choose to do that as paint. I just wanted to show you there that I purposely overlapped the blue on top of half of that black circle. I like that effect. I'm just playing around with the prints, trying to decide if I want to use it or not. I like that it's got a different pattern. It's almost like a little check basket weave pattern. And again, this is a lot of white going over top, but the reason why I do a lot of printed white patterns like that is because once it's dry, I can put fluid paint over that and glaze it. And all of a sudden, all these white tissue patterns could be colored. Whereas if I did that pattern, that stencil, in a strong color, I may not want, it is what it is when I put it down on the collage, whereas this way, it isn't what it is. It's just a start, and then I can glaze and change those colors. So that's why I do prefer white printing. This is already becoming something special. And remember, I'm not even thinking at this point what part I'm going to frame. It could be any corner of this, it could be the middle, it could be anything, but I'm just trying to give myself opportunities for things to emerge. Because I love, love, love what's happening in the top quadrant there, I don't want to overlap it too much. I want to really reveal that blue, green, and black detail because I like it. There's just a fun little story in that section. So this is just a very distressed, subtle part of that print where it just sort of rests over top of it without taking over. Isn't that fun? Look at that. I love it. You can still see the black circle under there, but it's pushed back a layer. Consider this a galaxy of collage. You know by now, if you've watched my work, that I really like to play with layers, depth, and illusion, and the illusion of depth and the illusion of movement and energy, and that's what I'm working on. I took an extra layer of this honeycomb print, and especially a part where it was fairly dense and opaque and busy, and I'm overlapping in some of that so that it morphs from a very loose, fine line honeycomb to, in the middle there, a dense cluster of it, right there where my fingers are. And again, that's just to allow depth and movement. You can see all the overlapping. There is so much fun movement and energy on here. I'm really delighted. This is going to be a shorter video because so much of the magic is already there. I can already tell that this painting is really speaking to me. So I'm going to glaze. This is an opaque green that I mixed. Oh no, I'm not going to glaze. What I'm doing is my script. And quite often, and I have no idea if I'm going to use that in my final piece or not, but I love doing this. I usually write something like peace, or I say mantras in my head when I do that scribble so that I know my intent is there. Now in this other area where I've got some of the white print, I'm glazing with blue. It's a semi-transparent blue, and if I get a wet wipe and wipe it back before it dries, I can lift some of that blue, and it's just left a transparent glaze over part of that white tissue print. And I love using my fingers because I can really press lightly or hard and smudge it accordingly. I'm trying not to touch that white green scribbling that I did there because it's still wet. But I wanted a patch of blue, and then before it dries, I'm going to make it a little thicker, because before it dries I'm going to get a toothpick and scrape into it and scribble to make some pattern. So I'm just being careful not to touch that green scribbling, and I'm fanning it out lightly with my finger on the right and pressing hard over that white to make it a paler glaze. Again, I've got depths of this blue already. I've got the strong out of the bottle, and then over that white patch it was more smudgy and pale, and then you can see how I could scribble into it with a stick. And then I'm fanning it out to make it, again, just give it a little bit more movement. And I encourage that spray with the water. And when that happened, I thought, oh, we've got a long dribble happening here. Let's go with it. So I'm going to add more paint to that and encourage that effect. It's just one more way of doing pattern and movement across the page. I like that. None of this was planned. Everything happens almost by the second. You can see how you can, while it's still wet, grab some of that with your finger and spread it around. I like how on that white patch that I'm working on there, you can start off where it's blue and then it fans out and becomes white. I like that movement. What do you think? Eventually I can cut away all the excess tissue off the edge of the page. I was going to let that dry, but I decided to add a little bit. This is my quinacridone Nicolazo gold mixed with some fluid white and some airbrush medium to thin it out a bit, and I'm using that as a contrast color of scribble. Again, I don't know what area, but at least I've got two there that they basically float on top of the rest, and we'll see what happens. I may or may not use all of that, but it gives me something to start with so that I can decide to keep or cover up later on. So the paper's starting to get a little wobbly and warped, so I'm just weighing it down so that it can dry in place, because I like the paint flow as it is and I want it to stay and dry where it is. Just going to add a little more smudging of that orange, just to help that smudgy look of orange move around the page. I don't want it in just one corner. I want it sort of a little hit of it in different areas around the page. And I love how cloudy and fuzzy that looks. And depending on how I cut this apart later on, I might go with that color theme where there's more orange, or I might go with the color theme on the bottom left there where there's more green. I won't know until I get there. I'm just playing there with the juxtaposition of the straight line there from that swatch of paper versus the honeycomb print. And then I've got I'm just going to add a little more of that orange, but give it some other little dash lines. Again, I don't know if that's going to end up in my final painting or not. In the meantime, after that session, I'd had a session with my gel plate where I just went nuts. Once I start gel printing, I end up, make sure you've got a space to put all these wet tissue papers, because I just went nuts trying different possibilities. And the whole point is to make a stash of more. Look at that. Oh, I love that. The whole point is to make a stash of different opportunities that, you don't think of painting when you're painting, but when you put these over top as a collage, those would be great contrast, by the way, the blacks. And they're different depths. Those are three different pulls from the same scribble on the gel plate. And now I've got a box full of amazing things to use. So after this dried, I gave it a coating of gloss medium. This time I did use gloss, because that really, it brings out the intensity of the colors and keeps it bright. If I used the matte medium, it would have been more dull. And I wanted to do that because I wanted to start getting inspired. And I'm bringing out various frame sizes. Look at how that isolates, and you sort of see immediately what little individual stories you could get. I'm going to cut this apart, but not until I make up my mind. That is a big fleck that I'm going to eventually, that's not on the page, it's just sitting there as a fleck, and I will eventually wipe that off. But look at how amazing that would make as a little painting. Same with that one. There's already stories, individual little stories. I like the green on the left and then the right. That works as a balanced piece. And then I thought, let's bring out some bigger frames and see. That works. I don't mind that. I like the balance of the blue and the green, and then off to the far right there's some busyness. and then you've got that green scribble. That would work. That that's way too busy. That needs a lot of work on top of it. But when I put this in the upper half of this, either that orientation or the other, they both work for me, and it's so close to being done. Really, really like that. But I still haven't decided. I mean, that works. It's really close. I like that the scribble is the first thing I notice. But I do feel like this wants to be a square mat frame. I like that. I like it a lot. I like that green patch and then the blue patch. And then up in the top right, it's not a patch of color, but it's a patch of busyness. This orientation works as well, but I'm really drawn to the square. Really, really, because I feel like if I do that, the story is very loud and clear without much to do to it. And I'm happy with it. I want to add a little black though, because I feel like I've got all that black up there in the top corner, and I want to balance it with a little bit of black in the bottom right, but I don't want to overpower because I'm really madly in love with what I've already got. So I'm just taking, this is a first pull from a tissue, and they're very bold scribbles, and I find that that's too strong. It's going to fight with that green scribble, so I don't want to fight with it. So I'm bringing the second pull that's a little more distressed. It's got a little brown in it, but I feel like that's still too bold, because all the black on the other page it's bold, but it's pushed back a few layers. This could work as a shape, but it's too bold. It's fighting with the green scribble. And then I thought, okay, I've got a little distress section down there. It's even got little bits of blue in it there, and that could work. I feel like the more distressed the black, and actually that's not black, it was Payne's gray, I think. And that's why it picked up a little bit of blue. Again, I don't want to put anything too black, but I'm going to isolate a few of these and tear it away with water and then see which one works out best. But you can see that I've grabbed one of the tissue prints that's my third pull, which is more distressed and not so strong. And I want to keep the jagged edge of all these black details, so that's why I'm going to tear it away with water so that I keep an organic edge. This is going to be very finicky because there's a lot to pull away, and I'm trying really hard to hold on with my left hand so I don't destroy that little print that I'm trying to isolate. It's very, very tricky. But that's a better way than cutting around with scissors, because I don't want to see those cut lines. I want them to disappear. This takes practice. You got to do it carefully or you could ruin the whole thing. So I'm going to do this with a few of the areas and then decide as I lay them over top. And again, that's why I like doing this with tissue prints. If you paint different options on top of your piece of work, then it's more permanent. It's harder. Even if you try to wipe it down, you could ruin what was there. I like that shape. It's quite distressed looking, not quite so bold, but I won't know until I try them all. So I'm going to do 3 options. I kind of know in my mind which one I want to use, but I'm trying to show you the choices that I make in my mind, and I can't do that unless I show you all 3 options. The third option I think I'll do after these, and I'm trying to remove even more of the tissue paper so that that doesn't show up. Taking a chance here that I won't ruin it. I like that there's a little bit of orange in that paint, and it ended up becoming almost brown, and that would work on the page. So those are only 2 options. I'll show you a third. I'm going to bring out my square mat so that I can decide, if I lay it down, how it's going to sit within that mat. You can see already that that's a fun shape. Definitely draws the eye down to the right, but I think it's too bold. That's all I look at, and then I I don't know what to do when I look at this. I see that and I find it's just too heavy. It makes the flow stop. That's just my opinion. This one's got a cool shape. Um, I like how the point of that middle one there it points to the scribble, and they kind of work, but I find it's still a little too strong. Now I could put that down and then put a little white over it, and that could subdue it. But I thought before I try that, let's try one more option. This is a really faded section. I pulled off more than I could use, but you see how the top left 3 circles disappear off the corner of the page almost? I want to put this down. Now you can see, I want to have that go off the page as well. And you can see already that magically this is the right one because they almost match in intensity. Look at that. It draws the eye down there. It's not overpowering. It speaks to the story. And I just keep judging, like I'm trying to decide where I'm going to glue it down, because once I take that mat away, I could end up gluing it in the wrong place. And I'm trying to tear away some of that excess because it's too heavy. I want to keep this very light and airy, this pattern. And I also want it to go off the page a little bit. I think that's magic. That's perfect. Now I'm putting my matte medium down, but before I set it in place completely, I want to make sure it's in the right spot for the matte. Just getting an idea of how to line it up on the page. Because once it's down, it's down. There we go. That was just what it needed. I'm very happy with that. And then I'm lightly dabbing that matte medium around the edges without pressing hard, because I certainly don't want to tear away that precious tissue print that I worked so hard at. Look at that. I'm happy. Just to be sure, I wanted to show that there's still an option, and even if I use this frame, I think that could work. I think there's a good balance, but I don't know, I just feel like the story this is telling me is that it needs to be square. But before I cut that page away, I wanted to make double sure. That works. The focus to me is still the scribble. I like the black, how it works and balances. I like that there's that patch of blue in the middle that's a little bit different. But I feel like if I was to use this frame, that print I just glued down should have moved to the right a little. This is the magic. I hope you agree. This is fun. And I think no matter if I cut this and use this, no matter which way you rotate that square, I think it would be a balanced piece of art, and it would be up to you which orientation you want to have upward. I like this a lot. Sometimes it just works. Sometimes a painting just tells you, okay, I'm ready, I'm almost there. So I've got mats coming in the mail that are 8 by 8 inch exposure, and then you need an overlap of at least a 1/2 inch behind that mat. So that's why I'm going to cut it 9 inches, and that was it with the frame. I've put my signature there, but I didn't want to overpower it, so I put my signature down very lightly. And I like the eye moving around the page. I think this is a lot of fun. I hope you like it too. And I hope you stick with me because there's more to come. Have a great day.